How much information is enough information?
But it's not about how much it is enough, it's how it's presented. I mean, we all know that, that there's a finite amount of information that people can take in and that they can process. So what we have to do as wayfinders is we have to make sure that that information is broken down and delivered to people as and when they need it, and not given all at once, which is quite often one of the main problems that people face when they're navigating. I mean, and this is one of the fundamentals of wayfinding, is how do you actually develop these hierarchies? I mean, if I give you an example, if we left the studio now and we went, say, to Glasgow, you went outside, you wouldn't find straight away a sign for Glasgow. You'd find a sign for the motorway, and then when you approach the motorway, you'd see a sign for the north, and so on. And just on the approach to Glasgow, maybe you start picking up signs for Glasgow. It's how information is needed. If we went outside here and every town in Britain was on a sign, then just imagine how difficult that would be to read.
But where do you see that where it's wrong? Where a situation that perhaps you come across where you look at it and go, that is too much too early? I mean, I've got one in mind. When you go into car parks and they give you all the information about the terms and conditions and so on as you enter, you never read it. But maybe, I don't know if that's sort of
that's right. I mean, take, for example, a hospital.
Right.
I mean, people are under a lot of different stresses when you actually go into a hospital. You're either visiting somebody that's sick or you're poorly yourself. You know, you're there on a busy junction, there's 5 cars behind you, you know, the lights are just about to change, and you're met with a sign 3 metres in height with 15 different department names, all using clinical terms. All you want to do is find out, where do I park? And when you've actually got...
The important thing here is what we're saying is just having signs, and indeed lots of signs, lots of information, is not always the right way.
No,
are there instances where actually signs are not needed, are not necessary?
You know, there are certain, like for instance, if you've got an airport, I mean, you're already busy enough to be looking for sort of where the terminal is that you're looking for. The last thing you need is another sign telling you where the coffee shop is, where you can actually see the coffee shop, you can smell the coffee.
Is there such a thing as sign pollution?
Yeah, I mean, there is, and this, again, sign pollution, visual noise, we like to call it, is quite a common factor, and it's there for a number of reasons. I mean, quite often it's people trying to help, but the main reason is that people do not look at an environment or as a whole and try to sort of think of an overall wayfinding solution for that environment. What tends to be is it's broken down into different areas, and this is where sort of politics comes into it and everything. And people have their own ideas, you know, for their own departments about how they want things to be signed.
Yes.
That just creates a massive amount of confusion, different colours, different formats and that kind of thing. And as we've mentioned earlier, that can be a problem.
A bit of empire building, I think, from time to time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are there signs, do you believe signs get left when, frankly, they should be removed?
Quite often, I mean, particularly in hospitals and places like that, we come across this a lot, where you've got old signage. Signs don't cost anything, they don't eat anything, and they're paid for, so they tend to get left up. So when somebody comes in to develop a new sign strategy, what will happen is the new signs go up and the old signs are left, and that in itself creates confusion.
We're talking about signs in terms of the visual side of seeing a sign. Can sound play a part in guiding people, in wayfaring?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, all forms of stimulation play a part. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, that we use a number of sort of conditionings and human-built mechanisms to navigate, you know, and quite of those are sort of from years gone by when we were hunter-gatherers and depended on our senses for survival. And a lot of those mechanisms are still in place today. It's just knowing when to use certain stimuli like sound or smell or whatever, when it actually enhances the wayfinding strategy.
I know you've said that sometimes a building can tell its own story. What do you mean by that?
Well, as I mentioned, sometimes buildings could be more intuitive than others. I mean, it might be quite obvious how a certain flow is through a building. I mean, it's very difficult to give examples of this because as wayfinders, what we're really concerned about is the environment that we're in. And every building, every environment is different. And this is what sets us aside from sort of certain people who may call themselves wayfinders, who do work from plan, or who do work sat in an office, and you know, it's design-led solutions as far as aesthetically that's great, but does it actually work in that environment? You know, you need to actually move people through that environment, and it depends on how people approach that as well. You know, as we said, what stresses they're under, what they're thinking about, the reasons for their visit, that kind of thing will all affect how they actually move through that place or that space. And what we need to do is be ready and aware of that to actually give them the information on the type of information they need when they need it.